Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro friends. Today, the episode is sponsored by Elixir Specialty Coffee. Please go to elixirspecialtycoffee.com and you can find the sponsor links in the show notes below. Today on the Daily Coffee Pro, we are going to continue talking about values. This is kind of like part 2 of the last episode. Today, we're talking about values, but not just defining them and understanding what they are. We're going to be talking about walking the talk when it comes to values. A lot of the feedback that I got from the last episode was, yeah, but Lee, I thought that I was doing those things that you were telling me, and I thought that I had screened for those things with regards to the people that I had worked for. And you know what? I hear you. I had thought that I had pegged some of my future or who had become my employers. That was a big part of the frustration, was that I couldn't have predicted that these employment situations would have ended up being what they turned out to be. And that was really frustrating because every time I moved to the next employer, it was with the idea of, right, so I'm going to make sure that this person's not an asshole and that they don't cheat me out of my pay and that they don't treat me like shit and that they respect the fact that I'm giving 110% of myself, all of those things. I only to most of the time eventually get to a point where I was disappointed and I had found out that yet another employer that wasn't showing up for me the way that I was showing up for them. And so I appreciate you guys reaching out and saying, yeah, but hold on, I thought I was doing those things and I don't know what I did wrong. All right, so here's what I've got to say to you first. Every single employment situation I got into that went sour, if I was really honest with myself, I knew that they were going to end up that way in the first 5 minutes of being on like what in Australia we call our trial shift. So usually you go in for an interview, you'll do okay at interview or do well at interview, and then they'll say come in for a trial shift. And that's usually you come in, you work for a couple of hours, and you both get to make the decision there whether it's a good fit or not. And 10 out of 10 times, I knew that an employment situation wasn't ideal for me at the time. But how I was rationalizing that for myself was, well, it's not ideal, but it's better than where I was. And a lot of the time it was. Most of the time it was better than where I was. But when what you're measuring against is a dysfunctional previous workplace, just aiming for a little bit better than highly dysfunctional isn't okay. It's not okay at all. We're really lucky that as time goes by, our labor laws are protecting us as employees, but that doesn't stop a lot of the shit that's been happening. And as you'll notice from what's been going on with Barista at Large, if you haven't followed them, go and follow them. Sorry, Coffee at Large. That's at Coffee at Large on Instagram, who will be on the Map It Forward podcast on Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time this week. Samantha and Felix will be on to talk about unpacking how that situation happened. We did invite Slate Coffee to be on the podcast as well on a different episode, so next week, but we haven't heard back from them and I doubt we will. That situation itself shows that despite the fact that we are in a time where labor laws protect us, it doesn't stop employers allegedly, I have to cover myself legally there, but allegedly treating their employees like shit. and not paying them and not being good to them. And, you know, I have spoken to Felix from Coffee at Large, and I'm well convinced that this wasn't one of those situations where this was a group of entitled millennials that, you know, wanted you to high five them every time you pulled an espresso shot. No. This was a dedicated group of professionals who just weren't treated well by their employer. And I'm excited to unpack this discussion with them on the podcast. But now let's go to some ways that you can walk the talk when it comes to your values and looking for other people's values. What I don't see a lot happen here in the US is that thing that I was talking about, whereby you have a trial shift that goes for a couple of hours. And I think as an employer, instilling that kind of a situation where you have employees, potential employees, after interview, come in and see if they fit into your workplace and see if the workplace fits them. It's really helpful for everyone to get a feel for each other, because not all workplaces are the same. Not all workplaces have the same vibe or groove, and you need to see how people work together. I think it's best to do this more than once. And have a couple of shifts where they only come in for a couple of hours. This will help you see if they're open to doing that. If they just think, well, fuck this, I don't want to turn up for shifts that are a couple of hours. If that's they're telling you some really important information when that happens. But something else that you can do as an employer is actually gauge questions and answers from them about what values are important to them. And if they haven't prepared those kinds of answers in the first time you do a trial shift, give them that as homework to come back and have a discussion about it the next day. Now, I know this sounds like it's a lot of effort for an employee who's going to get paid minimum wage, but you should only be paying your employees minimum wage until you are confident that they're going to be on the team long term. There's no reason to be paying employees who are a permanent fixture in your crew minimum wage. That's just insulting. You need to do better. Now, there are a couple of suggestions. If you want detailed, in-depth suggestions on how to do this kind of stuff, go and sign up for the webinar on our website, mapperforward.org/webinars, navigating a successful career as a cafe owner. There is so much great information in that video, and I think you'll get a fuck ton of great ideas about how to build a culture and build a team in there. I will say, you set the tone as the leader. You are the person who signals to potential future employees whether predatory behavior is going to live in your workplace or not. You and all of the leadership team do. Whenever a leader lets things just fly and doesn't set boundaries, then predators are going to know, bullies are going to know that they're going to have a playground in your workplace. You can't afford to allow that to happen. Now, as an employee, if you want to walk the talk and know whether a workplace is for you, make it a point to let future potential employers know how important it is for you to understand the values of what they have, and ask them more questions than what are your values. Ask them to demonstrate how they have expressed those values in the workplace. Talk to the other employees in your future potential workplace. Ask them if the values that have been expressed to you by that employer is something that they're aware of. Ask them if they feel that those things are important in the workplace and that the employer has shown very clearly that those are things that are important to uphold in the workplace. You will get all the reinforcement that you need from the answers of those questions. Either the employer has no idea what the fuck you're talking about, or they can very clearly define those things. All of which are important key bits of information. If somebody isn't going to live up to the standards that you're expecting, you have to be prepared to move on and not take the job. I was always worried that I would never get hired again. That had something to do with my music career, I think. Just this lack of self-confidence, this always wondering like, when's the next gig gonna happen? Is it gonna happen? Am I gonna land the next show? All of those things, even though the shows were doing really well, it was just a lack of self-worth and self-confidence. And so I didn't know how to select for great employers, but at the same time, the more and more I speak to other people who were coming up at the same time as me, the more and more I'm realizing that there weren't a lot of great employers. And that's because of the situation that's happening right now here in the US and continues to happen in places all over the world. The barrier to entry into our industry is so low that anyone can open a cafe as long as they've got the money to put one together. Anyone can open a roastery as long as they've got the money to put it together. There's nothing that requires them to know how to set boundaries and to build a culture and to employ people and treat them well and build a great business and read financial statements and understand the coffee supply chain and etc., 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 etc. Okay? We have a systemic problem in our industry. The purpose of Map It Forward is to help unfuck all that up. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take a long time for people to realize that they are a part of the problem and to see how they're contributing to it. But most importantly, for people to realize that they can be a beautiful part of the solution by just being open-minded and open-hearted and saying, okay, so I could do better. I could step up in a different way. How can I do that? The best advice that I can give to you right now is if you're an employer of a cafe owner, take the webinar, Navigating a Successful Career as a Cafe Owner. If you're a barista, take the workshop Barista and Beyond, Navigating a Successful Career as a Coffee Professional. And it's not just for baristas. This workshop is for any kind of a coffee professional. And I promise you will get so much from a professional and personal perspective on how to build your career from that workshop. That you'll just... It's one of those ones that just keeps giving and giving no matter how many times you listen to the audio or watch the video. And the bundle that we have made available to you has the video and it has the audio as well as the presentation and the career map, all in the web bundle. So head to mapitforward.org/webinars. We're going to keep releasing more of them every time we do a workshop. And hopefully we will start to see the changes that we're looking for. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.